All right, everyone, let's go ahead and get started. So this is Kate, of course. We're going to talk about MoxiWorks today, and we're going to follow the same format that we did a couple of weeks ago, where we'll be having a conversation. Feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question. Right now, everyone is muted. In a moment, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you all, but I do ask that you mute yourself so that we manage to cut down on as much feedback as we can. Let me know if you're having any trouble hearing me. The chat room is also open. We don't have anyone in the chat room today to answer questions, so I'll be answering those out loud as they come up, but do feel free to drop them in the chat, or of course just to unmute yourself and ask aloud. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute everyone, but do please just mute yourself unless you have a question, because let's try and cut down on as much feedback as we can. Great, thank you. Looks like just about everyone has done that. We've still got a couple of people who aren't muted. So if you could just mute your mics, that would be great. Now we are talking about MoxiWorks today. We haven't had a release since the last time we spoke, so there haven't been much updates on our end, but we did talk a little bit last time about how things were going with MoxiWorks in your office. The general impression seemed that people were pretty busy. You're having some trouble with adoption in your offices just because the agents didn't have time to learn it. It's been a couple of weeks since then. Does that still seem like it's the case? Does anybody have any insight into how that's going in your offices since we spoke last? Okay, from the silence, I'm going to assume that it's 100% adoption rate in all of your offices, and that's definitely good news. Okay, so Jen says that you haven't had any of your brokers use it yet. And Jen, do feel free to unmute yourself. You can just talk into the room, that's fine. Or if you'd rather use the chat, that's fine too. Now, is there any specific reason that your brokers have mentioned that they aren't using it? Is it just that they're not familiar with it, or they're using another tool?
I think mostly that everyone's kind of gun-shy to transition to it after the email migration.
Sure.
Here. But I am going to be working with the broker tomorrow to get all of her contacts moved into it, and so she can get going on it.
Great. And that's definitely one of the biggest pain points that we see for agents is contacts. So helping them out definitely, I think, will make that go more smoothly for them, and hopefully that'll help allay some of their concerns because that's definitely an understandable one. There were some hiccups in the migration, to be sure. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. When we spoke a couple of weeks ago, you guys definitely had some questions about MoxiWorks that you wanted to go over today, so let's get started on that. What can we talk about? Okay, so let's see. Laurel has a comment here that agents are frustrated with the lack of batch options for things, and many of them are bitter that it's the main screen when you log into the worksite. Well, those are both understandable frustrations, and I have to be honest, those are frustrations for us here at Support too. Windermere Services made the choice to have it be the main screen when you log into the worksite because in their opinion it was going to help drive adoption. Unfortunately, that's not anything that we can change, and trust me, we understand how frustrating it is because it's, you know, we log into the worksite 100 times a day to help you guys out, and we're still having to go through MoxiWorks too. The best way to help your agents avoid that, rather than going through Windermere.com and logging in there, is to have them log in to intranet.windermere.com. That'll actually take them directly to new work rather than being routed through MoxiWorks. Did everybody get that site? You need me to repeat it? If you didn't catch it, it's intranet. So that's I-N-T-R-A as in apple, N-E-T.windermere.com. So I do recommend that if you're having agents that are frustrated trying to log in. Now the good news about batch options is that many of those are coming in the future. Right now we have batch options for contacts. That's been added in the last few weeks, and I believe that we talked about that a little bit the last time we spoke, but just to cover it again, if you go into People, you see we have this Actions button down here in the bottom of the All People column now, and so you do have the option to batch add people to groups. So if you click Actions, you have the option to bulk sort categories by collaborators or personal. And we actually are looking at the option to create individual groups, so where agents can create their own groups for mailing lists and that sort of thing. And the estimated release date for that is actually July 1st. Of course, with any release, we can't guarantee that it'll come out at that point, but that is when we're expecting to see it roll out to the agents. So that should be coming shortly. And then I know that batch actions for templates and tasks will also be rolling out over the next couple of months. So hopefully that clears up a couple of those questions. Does anyone else have questions about problems their agents have run into in the last couple of weeks? Anything that we didn't discuss previously? Any new issues that you're seeing? No problems in the offices this week? That's good. Definitely that's what we like to hear, but I don't know that it's necessarily accurate. Did you guys have questions about other topics? Has it just been a really long week?
Kate, this is Jen, and I have a question.
Sure.
The broker that I'm going to help tomorrow has her contacts in the old work site, and they're broken into about 15 different groups. So when I go to import them into MoxiWorks, are we going to have to do that one at a time, or will it transfer over, if that makes sense?
Well, at this point, the contact management system in Work does actually have the ability to export all of the groups as one file.
Okay.
And then you'll upload that into Exchange. The thing to note is that those groups will not be reflected in MoxiWorks at this time. Because at this point, MoxiWorks doesn't have the ability to create custom groups. So she can definitely export them from the contact management system in Work and import them into Exchange, and she will see all of her contacts then in MoxiWorks, but they won't be in groups.
So then would you suggest waiting until after the tentative July 1st to do this? That way she can create her specific groups in MoxiWorks?
She could do that. We can't guarantee at this point that it's going to sync with the contact management system in Work. That's a much older tool, and MoxiWorks is designed primarily to sync with Exchange and Outlook, and its group syncing does function along the lines of Outlook and not the contact management system. So I would recommend having her contacts in place so that when the group option rolls out next week, then she's ready to go with that.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
Sure. So Mitzi has asked, some people have asked about using DocuSign here. Now when you say here, do you mean DocuSign in conjunction with MoxiWorks or just in general? Because there aren't currently any options to use DocuSign with MoxiWorks. That is actually one that I don't know if we'll be rolling that out in the future, but I'd be happy to look into it for you and get back to you, Mitzi. Now we've run into this issue a couple of times this week, and that's the number of contacts that people actually have in their Exchange account and then how that affects MoxiWorks. For instance, I spoke with someone today who had over 10,000 contacts in
Oh
exchange. Exactly. And as you might expect, that does cause MoxiWorks to crash, basically. It doesn't load the contact page when there's that much information to load. So if you're running into an issue where your agent has an extremely large number of contacts and they're having trouble getting into the people section or into MoxiWorks at all, the first thing that I would look at is having the agent go through their contacts in Exchange and seeing if they can clean that up any. If they have duplicates, if they have old contacts, things that can be deleted or removed, that sort of thing. At this point, I really wouldn't recommend more than 2,000 or 3,000 contacts at the most. After that, you're going to start to see some slowness, and then the more that number climbs, the more likely it is that the page isn't going to load in general.
Thank you for calling Windermere. This is Moxi. Hey, I'm doing fine. How about you?
Mitzi, if you could go ahead and mute your mic. Great, thank you. So has anyone else come across some questions that they've seen in their offices, anything that they're hearing from their brokers, anything specific that seems that they're struggling with? I did speak with an agent today who wasn't aware that they could actually deactivate transactions. In this case, the agent had created a duplicate transaction. So then he, of course, had it in there twice. He didn't want that to negatively affect his GCI goal, throw that count off. So in case you haven't seen that function, what you'll do is you'll actually go into the sales flow. So we'll go into here to prospects. And then we'll go to all transactions so that we can actually view the transaction. Then you're going to click this pencil that's in the upper right-hand corner of the All Transactions panel, and you'll see this button come up that says Deactivate. And it'll ask us if we're actually sure about that. You'll just click Deactivate, and that will remove the transaction. So that will make sure that if your agent does have that kind of just hiccup where they've entered the transaction information incorrectly and are having trouble editing it, or they've created a duplicate transaction, they can just go ahead and deactivate it. So hopefully you won't run into the need to do that very often, but just in case. So we've got some extra time, and it doesn't sound like we actually have all that many questions about Moxi today. Were there other things that you've been seeing in your offices? Any other problems that have cropped up? Any recurring issues that you wanted to go over? I'm here for you guys, so whatever you want to talk about, let's do this thing. No questions today? Okay, if nobody has any other questions, we certainly don't have to spend any more time. I know you guys are busy in your offices. The request the last time we spoke was to cover MoxiWorks today, but it doesn't seem like we have a lot of questions about that. What would you like to go over in 2 weeks? Is there anything else that anybody would like some more information on or a review? Anything that comes to mind? Okay, well, I'll go ahead and see if we can drum up something more interesting. It was great talking with you guys. If you do have any follow-up questions, just feel free to send me an email. That's techadministrator@windermere.com. So since we don't have anything else, I'm going to go ahead and end the training now. You guys have a great day.